He quietly turned another page. Flick. His eyes moved across the next lines of the book. Though a blade is limited in range, formless firing can slay targets far away. The writing continued confidently. I dare say formless firing is the greatest technique in archery. He flipped another page. Flick. But the tone of the writing suddenly shifted. However, not even formless firing could overcome the peerless triple blade. The explanation followed carefully. Though I managed to pierce the scroll with formless firing, it was only possible because it was an illustration. If it were a real person, I couldn't have won. The boy slowly lowered the book for a moment. A bead of sweat ran down his cheek. Gulp. He turned his head and looked toward the cave wall where the 3 ancient drawings hung in the mist. Realization spread across his face. So that's the peerless triple unity blade, a combination of all 3. His eyes narrowed as everything finally made sense. I knew they weren't ordinary drawings. It's no wonder I was defeated. He stared at the burned hole in the middle scroll. Then he spoke quietly. That hole was probably made by formless firing. He looked toward the scrolls again, determination forming in his eyes. Will my inner key and apex hunting technique be enough? His hand reached down and grabbed the strange bow he had taken from the chest. The moment he lifted it, the weight pulled at his arm. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. I'm sure this thing has something to do with it. The bow felt incredibly heavy in his grip. Then the explanation from the book echoed in his mind. A regular bow can't withstand the key of formless firing. He raised the bow and slowly pulled the string. Twang! The weapon trembled violently in his hands. Tremble, tremble. The words from the manuscript continued. So I have left behind a bow that can, made of pure iron, weighing over 100 pounds. The boy lowered the bow and sat down in the center of the cave. Behind him, the 3 ancient scrolls hung silently in the mist. He closed his eyes and crossed his legs. Time passed. Days passed. Finally, his voice broke the silence. It's been 10 days since I've learned the path to Wu Wei. A soft blue aura began circling his body as energy gathered inside him. I've gathered and combined all my ki to the core. The energy flowed deeper into his body, spiraling into a single point. His breathing slowed. His mind became still. 2 different ki are in my core right now, propelling powerfully. Energy swirled violently around him as he continued meditating. A combination of the ki produced by Heart Sutra visualization and the path to Wu Wei. The 2 forces flowed through his body like currents of a raging river. The path to Wu Wei really is no joke. Its strength is equal to Heart Sutra visualization after only 10 days. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. Energy surged wildly inside him as sweat ran down his face. The blue aura around him began shaking uncontrollably. His breathing grew heavy. Crap, the 2 ki are clashing into each other. Behind him, the energies manifested into 2 violent spirals, one blue, one red, crashing against each other like storms colliding. His body trembled as the pressure inside his core intensified. He gritted his teeth. I need to decide now whether to stop or continue the training. For a moment, the memory of the old master surfaced in his mind. The warning echoed in his ears. Many of your ancestors continued their training there and became crippled. The old man's voice grew stern. If you feel your ki colliding, you need to give up while you still can. The boy's face tightened as he struggled to keep control. Sweat dripped from his chin. Fear crept into his thoughts. What do I do? His fists clenched. Then his voice hardened with determination. I don't want to give up. His eyes suddenly ignited with a blazing red glow. "Yeah, I'll trust in the Heart Sutra visualization." The energy around him roared. "Let's go!" He focused his mind and forced the raging energy to move. Circulate the path to Wu Wei. Instantly, the two violent forces surged through his body like lightning. His hair whipped wildly as power erupted from his core. Lightning cracked across the cave as red and blue energy spiraled violently around him. The ground shook. The cave filled with thunderous energy as he screamed, forcing the two clashing ki to merge through sheer will. His body convulsed as the violent energy tore through him. His teeth clenched, eyes blazing red as the power surged uncontrollably. The pressure inside him kept rising. "It feels like my body is going to explode." He threw his head back and groaned in agony. Gah! The energy ripped through his meridians like lightning. Pain spread across his entire body. His face twisted with regret. "Shit! That was a dumb idea! This is bad!" For a moment, doubt crept in. His breathing became ragged as the two forces continued tearing at each other inside his core. Then he slowly tilted his head back, accepting the risk he had taken. "Well, my life is already on the line now, so might as well." He focused his mind again. The Heart Sutra visualization activated. Ancient characters began swirling around him like sacred seals, forming a storm of glowing symbols. The raging energies slowly began to bend to his will. The red and blue currents twisted together, circling his body like a vortex. The violent storm gradually calmed. The cave filled with mist as the energy stabilized. Finally, the aura settled. He stood there quietly, red traces of energy still flickering around him. His expression turned calm again. He exhaled slowly. "Whew, I did it." Sweat rolled down his cheek as he reflected on what had just happened. If the two ki repelled one another, I wouldn't have survived, as expected of Heart Sutra visualization. He rubbed the side of his head, still feeling the lingering energy flowing inside him. It's even able to fuse with other ki. Then he looked forward with a small, satisfied smile. Guess that's the end of the path to Wu Wei.
Suddenly, something strange happens. The boy's body begins to rise into the air, not because he jumped, not because of any technique, but simply because he thought about standing up. For a moment, he freezes in shock. Whoa, my body started floating just from the thought of standing up. It's as if gravity itself has lost its grip on him. The power flowing through his body feels completely different now. As he slowly descends back to the ground, a realization flashes through his mind. So, I guess it's time to test the peerless triple unity blade. But just as quickly, he remembers something important. Oh, right, there's still the formless firing technique. He walks over to a bow resting nearby and casually picks it up. The moment he grips it, his eyes widen. This 100-pound iron bow feels as light as a feather now. The strength in his body has increased to a ridiculous level. What once required immense effort now feels effortless. Standing in the middle of the forest, he raises the bow and draws the string. The air around him tightens. Energy begins to gather at the tip of the arrow. Then he releases. The arrow explodes forward like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, it tears through the air and slams straight into a massive tree. Boom! Wood splinters everywhere as the arrow punches deep into the trunk. A cloud of dust bursts outward from the impact, and the once unshakable tree now bears a massive hole in its side. Seeing the destruction caused by a single shot, it's clear. His power has reached an entirely new level, and this is only the beginning. The arrow slams into the tree with terrifying force. The entire trunk caves inward, splintering as wood explodes outward from the impact. The boy stares at the damage with wide eyes. Whoa, this is incredible. How can this even be blocked? What should have been a normal shot instead carried overwhelming power. It's clear now, his strength has already surpassed what he expected. Taking a deep breath, he calms himself down. I mastered shapeless shooting in a fortnight. His progress has been unbelievably fast, but there's still one thing left. Now the only thing left is the peerless triple unity blade. Satisfied with his training for now, he lowers the bow. Better return to the cave. With that, he leaps into the air. His body rises effortlessly, gliding across the sky toward the towering cliff where the cave lies. Even he seems surprised by how smooth it feels. This art really is amazing. I haven't even mastered any flying techniques. Yet somehow, his body moves through the air as if it were natural. Moments later, he reaches the cave entrance and lands inside. But the instant his feet touch the ground, a powerful pressure bursts out from within the cave. The sudden force makes him flinch. Wind spirals violently around him as energy crackles through the air. For a moment, it feels overwhelming. But instead of panicking, he simply smirks. I can handle this much. Red energy begins to swirl around his body, clashing with the lightning-like power filling the cave. The aura around him flares wildly as he pushes forward. Step by step, he advances deeper inside. Then suddenly, he stops. In front of him stand 3 ancient hanging scrolls. Each one displays a figure demonstrating a different sword technique. At the base of the wall sits a small wooden chest. The boy stares at the scrolls, scratching his head. Damn, are there instructions or anything? After all, I've never even touched a sword before. So instead of practicing elegant sword techniques, he starts with the most basic thing imaginable. Grabbing a rough piece of wood, he begins carving it down, slowly shaping it into a sword. Because if he's going to master the peerless triple unity blade, he'll have to start from the very beginning. Still confused by the scrolls in front of him, the boy decides to start from the basics. I don't really get it, but I'll make a wooden sword for now. Sitting inside the cave, he carefully carves a rough piece of wood. Shavings scatter across the ground as the shape slowly begins to resemble a sword. It's crude, but it will do. Once finished, he stands up and faces the 3 ancient scrolls again. Pull out the sword like this. He spreads his stance, mimicking the posture shown in the painting. His body twists slightly as he draws the wooden sword, copying every detail he can see. Then comes the next movement. Then, strike down. He swings the sword downward with force, trying to replicate the sequence exactly as it appears on the scroll, but something still feels incomplete. Still staring at the final scroll, the boy scratches his head in confusion. What's the last part? I've got no clue what I'm looking at. The final movement makes absolutely no sense to him. Still, he decides to try it anyway. Raising the wooden sword high above his head, he mimics the stance shown on the scroll. Sir, what is this? And the moment he swings, a blinding surge of energy erupts from the blade. A massive wave of power bursts forward, tearing through the air like a cannon blast. Before he can even react, the recoil hits him. Whoa! The force throws his entire body backward as the glowing sword energy shoots across the cave. The boy crashes and barely manages to regain his balance. Dust swirls through the air as the ancient scrolls flutter violently from the shockwave. For a moment, the cave goes silent. The boy stands there, trembling slightly. What in the world? Even he can't believe what just happened. That wasn't just a swing, that was a true sword aura. Taking a deep breath, he tightens his grip on the wooden sword. All right, one more time. This time, he focuses. He plants his feet firmly on the ground, raises the blade again, and gathers all his strength. Then, ha! With a powerful roar, he brings the sword down with everything he has. And once again, a blazing arc of sword energy explodes forward from the blade, racing through the cave like a streak of lightning. The technique hidden within the scrolls is finally beginning to awaken, and this is only the beginning of his mastery. As the blazing sword energy shoots forward, the boy suddenly bursts into laughter. So this is what it is. In that instant, everything begins to make sense. The scrolls weren't just showing movements, they were showing how to release the power behind them. Without wasting another second, he turns back toward the wall. Then the other scrolls, too. Standing firmly inside the misty cave, he grips the wooden sword and studies the second scroll carefully. His body lowers into position, muscles tense. Then suddenly, upward strike! With a fierce shout, he swings the sword upward with explosive force. At that exact moment, a streak of blue sword energy erupts from the blade and rockets toward the scroll. The power shoots forward like a beam of light, but the recoil is just as violent. Whoop! The boy flips sideways as the shockwave spins his body through the air. For a split second, it looks like the energy beam might take his head off, but he barely manages to dodge it. Landing back on his feet, he exhales sharply. Phew, thought I was going to lose my head there. Still, a grin slowly spreads across his face, because now he understands. I think I get it. These scrolls aren't simply instructions. They're keys to unlocking different sword techniques. His gaze slowly shifts toward the final scroll. What's the third one? The moment he focuses on it, the air around him begins to change. Energy starts spiraling through the cave like a rising storm. Blue currents swirl around his body, while a faint red aura flickers from within him. The power of the third technique is beginning to awaken. And whatever comes next will be far more dangerous than the last.
The moment he focuses on the final scroll, the energy inside the cave suddenly explodes outward. A blinding surge of power erupts from the technique, flooding the entire cave with a violent wave of energy. Lightning-like currents wrap around the wooden sword as the boy struggles to control it. His arms tremble under the pressure, yet somehow he manages to keep the blade steady. Electric arcs crackle around him as he grits his teeth. Gah, so powerful. This technique is on a completely different level. Then suddenly, the meaning behind the three scrolls begins to reveal itself. A realization flashes through his mind. First is swiftness, second is deception, and the third is the key of the moon itself. The moment he understands, a red aura slowly begins to rise from his body. The technique he's learning isn't just a sword strike, it's a form created from the sky-high motionless form, a path most likely forged by the legendary Wu Wei himself. And now, that path is beginning to unfold before him. The scene shifts. Night falls over the forest. A full moon hangs high in the sky, illuminating the land with pale silver light. Standing beneath the moon, the boy raises his sword. His body moves through the air with fluid precision as he begins practicing the technique again and again. Each movement becomes faster, sharper, more precise. His sword slices through the night air like a streak of moonlight. He leaps, spins, and strikes with perfect control. The swirling blade traces arcs through the darkness as the mist around him scatters with every swing. Under the silent gaze of the moon, the boy continues training relentlessly. Because he knows one thing. If he wants to truly master the peerless triple unity blade, then this is only the beginning.
Under the bright glow of the full moon,
The boy launches himself high into the air. Suspended against the massive moonlight behind him, he raises his sword and focuses all the energy in his body. Then, with a single, decisive motion, he strikes. A blazing red line of sword energy slices straight downward like a falling beam of light. Back inside the cave, the energy arcs across the wall and slashes through the ancient scrolls. The force tears through them with a sharp, violent cut. The boy lands back on the ground and exhales slowly. Whew, disgusting. The training had been brutal. It took 6 entire months just to cut through the first scroll, and 10 more months to finally break through the second. Nearly a year and a half of relentless practice. But now, only one challenge remains. Now I just need to cut the third. Time passes. The seasons change. The once green forest slowly transforms into a cold winter landscape. Snow blankets the ground, and the trees stand bare in the freezing air. Suddenly, a man drops violently from above. He crashes toward the ground with terrifying speed. Boom! The impact explodes into the earth, sending snow and debris flying everywhere. But the man doesn't stop there. He launches forward immediately, rushing toward a massive tree. With a fierce shout, he swings his blade. A red arc of sword energy bursts from the strike and slams into the towering trunk. The tree shudders violently under the impact. And in the next moment, the massive trunk splits apart. A clean, devastating cut slices straight through it. The power of the blade echoes through the quiet winter forest. And it's clear now, someone has become far stronger during all that time.
The moment the strike lands, the ground erupts. A violent shockwave blasts through the snow as the earth splits apart beneath the impact. Trees shake violently while frozen branches snap under the pressure. Snow explodes into the air like a blizzard. But the man doesn't stop moving. He dashes forward across the snowy ground, his steps splashing through the slush as he launches himself toward a nearby cliff. With a powerful leap, he drives his fist straight into the solid rock wall. Boom! The entire cliff cracks under the force. Huge chunks of stone break loose and crumble apart as the shock spreads through the mountain. Then another explosion follows. Rocks shatter, debris rains down. The impact sends fragments flying in every direction. When the dust finally settles, the man slowly turns around. His expression is calm, cold, focused. But his gaze isn't on the destruction behind him. Instead, he's thinking about the cave, about the ancient scrolls, and the training that consumed nearly 2 years and 3 months of his life. Standing in front of the final scroll, he finally understands what it represents. The first step of the peerless triple unity blade. Thoughtless blade. With a steady breath, he grips his sword. Then, without hesitation, he swings. A thin red line flashes through the air as the blade cuts forward with perfect precision. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just a single, flawless strike.
The warrior stood in the smoke-filled chamber, gripping his blade tightly. "I won," he said quietly, staring at the battlefield before him. But the fight was not truly over yet. With calm, controlled breathing, he raised his sword once again and spoke the name of his technique. The second step of the peerless triple unity blade, Loveless Blade. In a flash, a sharp crimson arc shot forward. The slash cut through the target with surgical precision, splitting it apart instantly. This technique was not meant for killing. It was a blade created purely for defense, a strike designed to defeat an enemy without taking their life. Fragments of the shattered target fell to the ground, echoing through the silent hall. But the warrior was not finished. He slowly turned his gaze toward the final target and murmured, "And the last." The air around him began to tremble. He raised his sword high above his head. Red energy surged along the blade, spiraling violently as power gathered around him. His eyes burned with fierce determination. Then he roared, the third step of the peerless triple unity blade, Endless Blade. In the next instant, the sword came crashing down. A massive surge of power erupted outward like a storm. The ground exploded, pillars shattered, and the entire chamber collapsed under the overwhelming force of the strike. Rocks and debris rained down as the dust cloud swallowed everything. When the destruction finally settled, the warrior stood alone before the ruins. He looked at the fallen remnants of the place and quietly spoke his final words. "My farewell to you, esteemed ancestors." Slowly, he knelt down, placing a hand on the ground in silent respect. After a moment of reflection, he stood back up. With the mountains stretching endlessly behind him and snow-covered peaks touching the sky, the warrior began to walk forward, leaving the past behind him and stepping toward whatever destiny awaited him next.
The young man lay comfortably in a hammock, gently swaying in the warm afternoon breeze, completely relaxed, completely carefree. Beside him stood an old master, gripping his staff with frustration. "Boy," the old man snapped, "you need to have some aspirations at your age." He sighed deeply and continued, "With your strength, you could become a general of an army, or even the strongest warrior in all of Zhongyuan's Murim." But the young man didn't even open his eyes. "I already have an aspiration," he replied lazily. The old master raised an eyebrow. "Oh, is that right? Tell me about it." The young man stretched comfortably in the hammock before answering. "A humble, honest life, basking in warm sunlight and being well fed. That's the best life." For a moment, everything went silent. Then, "Brat!" The old master exploded with rage. He swung his staff down, trying to smash the hammock apart. "Try dodging this, too!" But the young man barely moved. He simply leaned back, still lounging. "Come on, Gramps," he said casually. "I'm beyond your reach now." The old master growled and threw a punch straight at him. "Gah!" But the young man calmly blocked it with 2 fingers. "Ha ha! You should save what little strength you have." The old master, now completely furious, launched another punch, but again the young man stopped it effortlessly. "Like I said." The old master froze in disbelief. "Gah!" For the first time, he realized something. This lazy brat was far stronger than he looked. That night, inside their small cabin deep in the mountains, the atmosphere became quiet. The old master sat across from the young man beside a dim candlelight. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I won't tell you what to do anymore." The young man listened quietly. "But don't you think you should at least find a wife?" The old master sighed. "And continue the bloodline?" The young man sighed quietly. As if there are any women in these mountains. He had lived in isolation for years, so the idea of finding a wife here was simply ridiculous. But then, the old master calmly dropped a shocking truth. "Your wife is in Zhongyuan." The young man's eyes widened. "What?" The old master stroked his long beard and continued. "When you were 4 years old, I made acquaintance with the head of the Sichuan Dang family and arranged an engagement." The young man froze in disbelief. The Dang family, one of the 5 mightiest families of Zhongyuan and the strongest clan in the entire Sichuan region.
The old master placed a jade plaque on the floor. This jade plaque will prove that you are the Dang family's son-in-law. The Dang family should have the other half. The young man slowly picked up the plaque. His expression became serious. Then the old master handed him another item, a thick, ancient book. This is the Tome of Heart Sutra. It belongs to the Shaolin Temple, so return it on your way to Sichuan. For the first time, the young man realized something. His quiet life in the mountains was finally coming to an end. Meanwhile, far away from the mountains, a rider dashed through the forest at full speed. "Ha! Ha! Keep it up, Dark Wind!" The armored scout urged his horse forward desperately. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. It was foolish of me to blindly believe the scout's words. Suddenly, the horse screeched in panic. "Err! Whoa!" In the next instant, the ground beneath them exploded. Ice spikes burst from the earth. The horse was thrown violently into the air. Crash! Both rider and horse slammed onto the dirt road. Dust filled the air. The scout groaned as he struggled to move, and the horse lay motionless beside him. The journey had just taken a deadly turn. The young warrior knelt beside his fallen horse. Dust slowly settled around him. "I'm sorry. This is all my fault." The loyal horse had carried him this far, and now it lay motionless on the ground. The warrior tightened his grip on his sword. He slowly raised it above his head. His eyes hardened with resolve. Goodbye. But before the blade could fall, the sound of galloping hooves echoed through the forest. Suddenly, a group of riders burst out from the trees. "There! Capture him!" The warrior turned sharply. His enemies had finally caught up. Moments later, a large man stepped forward from the group. Tall, broad, covered in heavy armor and a fur mantle. "I am Taru, chief of the Baihe tribe." His voice was cold and commanding. "I will spare your life if you surrender." The warrior slowly raised his sword. His eyes burned with defiance. "Shut it! Surrendering is no different from death for us Yaku tribe." Then he pointed his blade forward. "Come at me." In the next instant, he launched forward. Ha! His body shot across the battlefield like a bolt of lightning. Steel clashed violently. Clang! The two warriors collided head-on. Their blades sparked as they crossed, but Taru's eyes widened. He hadn't expected the young warrior to be this fast. The fight had only just begun.
The young warrior lunged forward with everything he had. His blade cut through the air. But suddenly, Taru's eyes widened. He moved faster than expected. Clang! In a single motion, Taru struck the weapon aside. The young warrior's sword spun away, flying straight into a nearby tree. For a brief moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The young warrior stared at his empty hand. Sweat dripped down his face. Then Taru spoke calmly. "Very good for your age." He lowered his weapon slightly. "What is your name?" The young warrior straightened his posture. "Yaku tribe's vice chief, Guyuk." His voice was steady. Then he continued, "I trust you won't shame me, as you've named yourself clan chief. Grant me an honorable death." Taru studied him quietly. Then he nodded. "Fine. I am also a man of honor. I shall uphold yours." Under the dim moonlight, Guyuk knelt on the ground, calm, proud, ready to accept his fate. Behind him, Taru slowly raised his weapon. "Farewell!" The blade came down, But suddenly, thud! Taru's eyes shot open in shock. Gah! An arrow had pierced straight into his back. Blood spilled as he staggered forward. "Who's there?" Taru roared in fury. The warriors quickly turned toward the forest. The trees stood silent, but something or someone was hiding in the shadows.
The forest suddenly went silent. Then, crack! A branch snapped high above the trees. Before anyone could react, a shadow dropped from the sky. Thud! A young man landed between the warriors. Dust scattered across the ground. The soldiers instantly raised their weapons, but the newcomer simply folded his arms calmly. "It's unfair attacking someone with so many people." His voice was relaxed, almost amused. Taru narrowed his eyes. "I am Taru, chief of the Baihei tribe." Then he glared at the stranger. "Who might you be?" The young man casually stretched his arms. "Just a sleepy man who was awakened because of the noise." The soldiers exchanged confused looks. Even Guyuk stared in disbelief. How could someone remain so calm in the middle of this battlefield? But Taru's patience was already gone. "Arrogant bastard, get down on your knees at once." The soldiers rushed forward, spears aimed straight at the mysterious man, but the young man didn't move. Instead, he smiled. "You can kneel yourself." In the next instant, whoosh, an arrow shot forward. Thud! It slammed directly into one soldier's armor. Gah! The man was thrown backwards instantly. The battlefield froze. The mysterious archer had just entered the fight. Two soldiers rushed forward with their spears raised. Urgh! But before they could strike, the mysterious archer moved. In one smooth motion, he drew his bow. Twang! An arrow flew instantly. Gah! One soldier cried out as the arrow pierced straight through his armor. Another arrow followed. The attackers collapsed before they could even reach him. The young man calmly lowered his bow. Then he glanced at Taru. "Hey, Chief, attack me again and everyone dies." The warning was cold and absolute, but Taru refused to back down. He raised his blade and charged. In the next instant, thud! An arrow slammed directly into his shoulder. Ugh! Taru staggered back. His eyes widened in shock. "When he's powerful." The battlefield fell silent. Moments later, the young warrior Guyuk bowed respectfully. "You saved my life. Thank you very much." The archer simply looked up at the quiet night sky. Meanwhile, behind them, the defeated enemy sat tied up against a tree. Guyuk spoke again. "Why were they trying to kill you? You look like you're from the same tribe." He continued explaining. "I'm part of the Janshu Jurgens, but there have been many internal battles lately." Then he asked carefully, "Where are you headed, sir?" The archer answered casually, "To the Shaolin Temple. Do you know the way?" Guyuk nodded. "The Shaolin Temple is about 20 days south of Beijing." The archer raised an eyebrow. Then he asked another question. "What about the Deng family in Sichuan?" Guyuk blinked in surprise. "Sichuan is southwest of Zhangguan, but it'll take 5 or 6 months because the road is so harsh." The archer froze. "Ah, that far?" He grabbed his head in frustration. In his mind, his grandfather's voice echoed. "If you keep moving diligently, it'll take you only a little more than a month." The young man clenched his fists. "Why the hell would you lie to your grandson?" Guyuk watched silently, completely confused. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "Wherever you're headed, I suggest you stock up in our village before you leave." The archer leaned back with a tired sigh. His journey had only just begun.
The next morning, 2 riders traveled quietly along a forest road. The sound of hooves echoed through the trees. Clop, clop, clop. After the battle the night before, the 2 had finally introduced themselves. "My name is Gu-yuk," the young warrior said proudly. "From now on, I will consider you my brother." The archer glanced forward calmly. "I'm Ulji-so-moon. Just call me Moon." The road stretched quietly ahead of them, but suddenly, Moon's eyes narrowed. In the distance, a cloud of dust was rising fast. Dozens of riders were approaching. Heavy armor, spears raised, warriors charging through the forest. Moon looked at Gu-yuk. "What's this? More enemies of yours?" But Gu-yuk suddenly burst into a grin. "Hyungnim, those are our men. They must have been looking for me." Without hesitation, he raised his arm high. "Chief!" The riders quickly slowed their horses. One of them stepped forward. "Oh, are you alive? Thank goodness." Gu-yuk lowered his head respectfully. "I'm deeply ashamed, Chief. 100 men died because of my stubbornness." The chief shook his head calmly. "They died for our tribe. It's unfortunate, but they all died honorably." Then his eyes shifted past Gu-yuk, toward the quiet archer standing behind him. "But who might that be?" Gu-yuk turned back. His eyes lit up. "Oh!" The mysterious man who saved his life was finally about to be introduced.
Gu-yuk pointed toward the quiet archer beside him. "He's the one I owe my life to. His skill with the bow is incredible." Then he smiled proudly. "Hyungnim, this is our tribe's high chief." The armored leader studied the young archer carefully. After a moment, he placed his hand over his chest in respect. "My name is Marananta. I am grateful to you for saving our vice chief's life." Not long after, they arrived at the tribe's camp. Dozens of great tents stretched across the grasslands. Warriors guarded every entrance. This was the heart of the tribe. Inside the camp, Gu-yuk called one of the soldiers forward. "Mossad, you will now serve this man. Pledge your complete loyalty to him until the day you die." Without hesitation, the soldier dropped to one knee. "My name is Mossad," his head lowered in absolute loyalty. But the archer frowned slightly. "I'm Ulji-so-moon. Don't ever kneel before me again." The soldier froze. "Yes, Chief." Moon sighed. "Chief? Just call me by my name." But Mossad's face turned pale with shock. How could I call the man I serve by his name? To him, such a thing was unthinkable.
Moon looked at the soldier quietly. Then he asked a simple question. "How old are you?" The soldier blinked in confusion. "Huh? 19 this year, sir." Moon nodded slightly. "Then you're younger than me. So just call me Hyungnim." The young soldier's face turned pale. "What? No, that would be—" Before he could finish, Gu-yuk cut him off. "Do as he says. Your job now is to do whatever he tells you." And just like that, the soldier had no choice. Meanwhile, the peaceful tribe camp stretched across the grasslands. White tents stood beneath the open sky. Sheep wandered lazily across the fields. But inside one of the tents, Moon was learning something important. "There are 2 societies in Junyan," the boy explained. "One ruled by the emperor, and the other a society of Murim warriors called Gangho." Moon nodded slowly. "Aha! So Junyan is divided between a country called Gangho and the Ming dynasty." The boy laughed awkwardly. "Gangho isn't a country. It's a society of Murim warriors living within the Ming dynasty." Moon leaned back slightly, thinking. So it was founded by Murim warriors, and the Shaolin is the most powerful clan there.
Not long after, Gu Yuk rushed into the tent with urgency on his face. "Hyungnim, I believe the war will begin again." Moon slowly turned his head. "Huh? Really? It's been pretty quiet here the past few months." Gu Yuk nodded. "The Baihe tribe has reached Mount Mita. They're only about 20 miles away." The air inside the tent suddenly felt heavier. Soon after, Gu Yuk prepared to leave. Outside the tent, the wind blew across the open plains. Moon stood quietly as Gu Yuk bowed respectfully. "Return in one piece." Gu Yuk placed his fist into his palm. "Yes, Hyungnim, I'll return victorious as soon as possible." Then he turned to his subordinate. "Mossad, take care of Hyungnim while I'm gone." The young soldier immediately bowed. "Yes, Vice Chief." Gu Yuk walked away toward the battlefield, his cloak fluttering behind him in the wind. Moon watched his figure disappear into the distance. Then he asked calmly, "How strong is the Baihe tribe?" The boy hesitated before answering. "About 3 times the size of Yaoku's. In a full-scale war, we'd definitely be at a disadvantage." Moon stared toward the darkening horizon. Storm clouds were gathering above the grasslands. He narrowed his eyes slightly. That doesn't sound good. In the distance, the vast plains stretched endlessly, and somewhere out there, war was already beginning.
Across the vast plains, 2 massive armies faced each other. Thousands of soldiers filled the battlefield. Banners whipped violently in the wind. The air was thick with dust and tension. Then, a rider galloped across the front lines. Behind him, an army of blue-armored warriors roared like thunder. "There might be less of us, but most of them are untrained soldiers." The commander raised his blade high. "Charge!" At once, the entire army surged forward. War horns echoed across the plains. From the opposite side, another army began to move. An old general watched the charge calmly from horseback. Then he gave his command. "Cavalry, attack from both sides." His eyes burned with confidence. "Advance!" Suddenly, the ground shook. Enemy riders stormed forward like a tidal wave. Spears lowered, war cries erupting across the battlefield. "Yaha!" Hooves thundered against the earth. Dust exploded into the sky. And within seconds, both armies crashed into each other. Steel met steel. Blades clashed. The battlefield erupted into chaos. The war had begun.
The battlefield exploded into chaos. Arrows rained down like a storm. Soldiers screamed as they fell from their horses. Steel clashed against steel. The ground shook beneath thousands of charging warriors. Dust swallowed the battlefield, turning the plains into a storm of blood and steel. In the middle of the chaos, Gu Yuk fought like a raging beast. His blade flashed through the smoke. Enemies rushed him from every direction. But far away, on a rocky hill overlooking the battlefield, Moon stood silently. He watched the war unfold below. Then he spoke calmly. "Mossad, bring me a lot of tree branches." The young soldier quickly obeyed. Soon, Moon began carving the branches with a small knife. Shk, shk, shk.
Wood chips fell to the ground. One by one, the branches became arrows. Below them, the battle only grew more brutal. Warriors crashed into each other. Spears pierced armor. Horses screamed as they fell. Blood painted the battlefield red. Moon slowly raised his bow. I don't want to kill, but if I want to prevent more deaths. His eyes sharpened. The bowstring tightened. Twang! The arrow shot forward like lightning. It tore through the air and struck a charging enemy soldier. The man's weapon flew from his hand. Ah! At that same moment, Gu Yuk roared across the battlefield. Hi-ya! He leaped through the air like a falling meteor. His sword crashed down toward the enemy below. The battle had only just begun.